Hello and welcome to Today's Take, the podcast that takes you beyond the headlines and gives you the story behind the story that you see on TV. I'm Jane Azzopardi. During the week, I bring you the news headlines and breaking news on Nine's Today Show. But in this podcast, we like to explore one story a little bit deeper. And this week, we are diving into the kids' social media ban and YouTube's inclusion.
Well, Australia's landmark crackdown on social media use for children under 16 will expand to include YouTube.
Generally speaking, I think that it's fair to say that social media companies have never done anything in the best interests of our children and young people.
For more, we're joined by Communications Minister Annika Wells in Canberra.
YouTube did send the Wiggles to try and persuade me to their position.
Did they?
They did. They sent Big Wiggle, and obviously, like my twins. Love the
you're
Wiggles.
joking, right?
No. No, and that's all right. I mean, YouTube has creators like the Wiggles. They have a right to exist. The Wiggles are a treasured Australian institution, but like I said to them, you're arguing that my 4-year-old twin's right to have a YouTube login is more important than the fact that 4 out of 10 of their peers will experience online harm.
Well, when the Wiggles are called to Parliament House, you know it is big. So we have brought in our own big gun today, tech expert Trevor Long, to kind of give us his insight and tell us the ins and outs of this social media ban and YouTube being included in it. Trevor, welcome to Today's Take.
Thanks for having me.
You're actually our first studio guest here in our podcast studio, so thank you for that. I want to get to the headline this week. We knew the government was putting this ban on social media for kids under the age of 16. We knew that, first YouTube was out, then the government was considering it. Now it is definitely in. What's your take on that?
Look, my take is that if you're going to have a ban on social media, YouTube does need to be part of it. Back in March, when we realised that this conversation about YouTube being excluded wasn't just a rumour, it was written into the draft rules, I started doing some research of my own. I got a couple of phones and I put fresh accounts on them and I just scrolled through TikTok and YouTube constantly. I think I did 450 pieces of content.
Did you have an age on those accounts?
I set them up with no age. I set them up with, I set them up as under 16s.
Okay.
So young accounts, 13-year-olds. Scrolled. I think I did 450 pieces of content. And what I found was that YouTube showed far more ads, firstly, than TikTok did. And the content that I didn't deem to be relevant to kids was far higher on YouTube Shorts than it was on TikTok. And this is, Jane, the real thing I think we need everyone to understand here. When we talk about YouTube as a social media, we're actually not talking about the YouTube that you and I use and that frankly most people use up on the TV or on your computer. We're talking about YouTube Shorts. When you open up the app, kids, and my kids, before they were allowed social media, this is what they would do. They would open up YouTube and we thought they were just watching Mr. Beast. No, they're on YouTube Shorts, which just looks like TikTok. So if it is social media, it has to be included in the ban.
Okay, my next question to you is not what I was going to intend to ask you. What's YouTube Shorts?
It is YouTube's take on TikTok, because you got to remember 4 or 5 years ago, YouTube was a huge video platform, didn't really have any young or short form audience. And then Instagram came along and started copying TikTok because TikTok was booming. Right. They were taking audience and they were taking time from users. And TikTok is essentially short form content, 30, 60 seconds, even longer, but it's short and you swipe and you swipe and you swipe. And the brilliant thing about TikTok, and I genuinely think it's amazing, that when you see a piece of content that you like, it goes, he watched this whole thing, he shared it with his mates, he hit like, I'm going to find him more of that. And it does. 3 videos later, you see a similar video. And Instagram realised they needed to do the same thing, and they did with Instagram Reels. And then YouTube realised if they didn't pivot, if they just were this widescreen computer and TV program, it wasn't going to compete with TikTok, and young people weren't going to come to their platform. So they added a little tab called YouTube Shorts, and it is exactly what it says. It's short videos, and when you scroll and you scroll and you scroll, it's just like being on TikTok.
Well, you've just taught me something that I didn't even know I was going to learn today, because that's not how I watch YouTube. So when the government is looking at including YouTube with TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, what's the government's argument here? And what's YouTube's argument for not being included?
The government's argument is pretty clear. If you're going to be exposed to an algorithm in simple terms is a computer program that learns what you like. Just like I said, you watch this video enough, we're going to send you more of that. All the platforms have an algorithm. YouTube does it really well for us that use it in a normal way. I watch enough comedy podcasts, I'll see more of them. I watch enough videos about The Sopranos, I'll see more about it. So it learns what I want. Because in reality, that's what we want today as consumers. We want to quickly find things that we're going to want to watch because there's so much content out there. How are you ever going to find it? But the problem with an algorithm is that it knows so much about you. It can create a profile of you, and that profile serves for advertisers and for those companies like the social media companies to potentially send you more content, and it can send you down a rabbit hole. And that rabbit hole can be fun. It could be an exploration of a topic, but it can also be quite harmful and dangerous because it could be that you go down a rabbit hole of beauty care, and that's great. But beauty care becomes plastic surgery, becomes eating disorders, and that's where we're worried about our kids. And I have young kids, I'm worried about them. So the algorithm is what the government is trying to remove from the kids' lives, as well as comments. You know, they don't want kids being able to comment on videos. They don't want kids to be able to create videos that then have comments made on them. A young 13-year-old who's got this real cool interest in something makes a YouTube video, hey, welcome to my YouTube channel, and then it only takes one bully in their school or bully in the community to say, you look horrible in this, you don't know anything about this, for that kid to go, oh man, and that's what we want to stop.
Yeah.
We want to stop that under 16 having this feeling. So that's where the government's going. YouTube, when they looked at this, was like, they had a sweetheart deal with Michelle Rowland's ministry to not be included. And to be clear, that the draft rules didn't say because YouTube was educational, it just said YouTube was excluded, which was a very strange thing. But YouTube's argument is, we're educational. Our content is used in classrooms. Our content is used by people around the world to learn how to do things. It's entertainment and it's educational. So let's not stop kids learning. That was YouTube's argument.
Okay, but here is where I feel like the YouTube argument falls down, right? Because YouTube Kids will still exist. Kids can still watch YouTube as long as they don't have their own YouTube account.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is saying you can't log in as yourself, but if mum and dad, they can still show you videos on YouTube. So it doesn't stack up.
It doesn't stack up, which is why they're pivoting.
Right.
All this legal threat, we'll get to that in a second, is a different thing. It's not about education, it's about political freedoms. So the educational argument is completely moot because of exactly what you just said. A teacher in a classroom finds a really cool video about explaining long division, to primary schoolers. And she thinks, or he thinks, if I share this with the kids, it's so much more engaging than what I can do in the classroom. Shares it to them, and they all sit and watch it either at home or it's great. You can still do that. You can still share a link to a video, no problems at all. Every single YouTube video, every single one, good or bad, is still available for everyone to watch because you can just click a link to see it. There's nothing stopping anyone doing that. So I, as a parent, can still send a funny, informative, or educational video to my kids and say, watch this. And there's no restriction on that. The restriction is they're not allowed to have an account, which allows them to upload content and make comments. That's the restriction.
Okay. YouTube is obviously, so intent on not being included in this ban that, as we heard at the start of this podcast, they even sent the Wiggles to lobby the minister. How much is at stake here for that company?
It's funny because I don't think we could quantify that they make much money at all out of kids because kids are very anti-ads. I don't know if your kids have done this, but my kids are often like, what am I seeing here? Because they're like, why are there ads in this? I'm like, ads pay for what we do, it's funny to have that conversation with kids. So I don't think they get great revenue from kids, but I think for these companies, the potential long-term revenue of onboarding a kid at 13 or 14 and starting to learn about them, knowing about who they are when they're 16, 17, 18, 19, you've got this great profile of them, who they are over time. And that might allow you to bring up retro content for them that was from when they were 13. But more importantly, it just allows you to know who they are and market to them. They want to know who kids are at 16 so that they can send them the right ads to get more clicks and make more money. There's no other reason, Jane. There's no other reason why these companies don't want this ban other than to say they want to make money from our kids. And, I don't think anyone would argue that we don't want them to make money out of our kids. So let's get rid of the algorithm for kids.
That's actually the line in the government's press release that really brought this home to me when I read it, which was Annika Wells saying, we want kids to know who they are before platforms assume who they are. I've got two little boys. I see all the news about Andrew Tate, other sort of unhealthy things that they can see on social media. And I also see, as you mentioned, the algorithm. My kids started off watching videos about cars. Next minute, they're watching kids' families dressing up as superheroes and fighting each other.
Yeah.
And next minute, where does that end?
Yeah.
That's the scary part as a parent.
Honestly, and I'll be very clear here. I've never been a supporter of this ban because I genuinely don't think it will solve the problems that we are worried about with our kids in society. And you know, self-harm, body image and all those things. Bullying is not going to stop because we get rid of social media. But if we're going to do it, we've got to do it all in. And that line, I was kind of set back by that. I was like, that's actually a brilliant line. If anything, I would have hoped that a year ago, that was the argument. It was not ban social media, it's ban algorithms for kids under 16. Because kids under 16, there are many stories, Jane, of kids in remote and regional areas or just in metro areas who just don't have a great community, community in school. And they find great connection through platforms like YouTube and TikTok, like-minded things. My 13-year-old went to the store and bought a fishing rod with his own money. I didn't even know he liked fishing. He didn't, because he saw it on TikTok. Genuinely discovered this stuff on TikTok. So it does happen, it can be good, but the algorithm is the problem. And that statement is what the Minister and the Prime Minister should absolutely keep coming back to if they want to keep winning the hearts and minds here of parents, because this next 6 months is going to be a challenge for parents going into this period.
Doesn't the algorithm, like, even if you're not logged in, doesn't the algorithm still know what device you're watching it on and can still kind of feed you information?
I think this ban speaks to essentially not learning. Not just purely the algorithm. So
so just not learning about who
theory,
you are.
You're right. A device, if you use the same device not logged in, it does know who you are. But I would argue that that's a cautious problem for the platforms. They need to be very careful not to let that happen for under 16s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mentioned my kids. You're at the other end of the parenting journey to me. Yeah. You've got teenagers, as you mentioned. Some of them already have social media accounts. So what's actually going to happen in practice when this ban comes into force?
This is something I didn't work out until I read the legislation quite closely. There is there's nothing in place that says a 13-year-old now can keep their account. So my 13-year-old and my 14-year-old are talking now, literally around the dinner table. My son's like, I'm going to have to go 18 months without it. My daughter's like, I'm going to have to go 9 months without social media, because on December the 10th this year, 2025, the platforms are responsible for stopping kids having accounts. So it's on them. Otherwise, they get a $45.5 million fine. So my kids, I assume, are going to open their phones on the 10th or 11th, depending on US time and everything, and it's going to say your account's been suspended or your account's no longer active. And they're literally not going to be able to use their social media anymore. And it will be until they turn 16 that it's on us to prove who they are and how old they are. The social media will literally go dark for kids that already have it, that are under 16, and it'll be hilarious for kids that turn 16 on December the 13th or something, because there'll be like 3 days without it and things like that. But, you know, technically, we don't even know how it's going to be done, Jane, because the legislation, again, makes it very clear. Parents cannot be prosecuted for their kids being on social media. So the responsibility is not on us as parents to stop our kids. So in fact, I don't need to do anything. The Prime Minister wants it that way. He doesn't want me as a parent to have to do anything, which I disagree with, because I think parents should parent in this case. But essentially, the platforms have to stop it, and if they don't, they get the fine. So they will pretty instantly, because they do know how old people are pretty well because of what they watch and how they interact, the comments they make and things like that. They know broadly how old kids are. You will find on December the 15th this year, 16 and a half and 17-year-olds whose accounts are shut down because the platforms think they're 14. Some kids aren't as mature as others. So there will be problems. This will be the stories that we're reporting on in December and January. 16, 17 and 18-year-olds who are banned because the platforms think that they're younger.
So that was going to be my next question, is because the companies are saying, oh, it's too hard for us to work out how old kids are. But I mean, they know everything about us already, Trevor. Does that argument really stack up? Can they really say, oh, we don't know that that's a 14-year-old? I mean, how are they going to do it?
I side a little bit with the tech companies here. It's not possible to know exactly how old you are, is what I would say. It's certainly possible to put you in a bracket, and that's how Apple, Google, all these, they talk about brackets. Am I 12 to 16, under 16, under 18, that kind of thing, right? But there's a thing called an age assurance trial going on, which is technology that you hold your phone up and take a photo and we'll do this, and it works out how old you are. Those companies that do age assurance are saying we can do it. But what they also say is the variability or the error rate is about 18 months, which means a 16-year-old and 9 months can be tagged as a 15-and-a-half-year-old. A 14-year-old could be tagged as a 16-year-old. So we're going to have huge variability. And my biggest argument here is I think of my daughter, who's going to be the first one to get back into social media. When my kids turned 13, Jane, you know what they wanted for their birthday?
What?
Social media. Because we're a strict household. can't have social media, it's for 13-year-olds only, because that was the platform rule. What's my daughter going to want on her birthday? Social media back. How are the platforms going to prove that she turned 16 on this day? No Face ID is going to fix that. Might go to my daughter's netball game and I look at the kids on the court and I go, that kid looks 12.
Yes.
That kid looks 16.
Yes.
But they're all between 14 and 15.
Yes.
That's the age group they're in.
I'm thinking,
if I can't tell, how's a computer going to work it out?
back to myself being in year 10, you know, there were boys in the class who had beards and there were boys who still looked like children.
Yes, so the age verification is a massive problem because, again, the legislation makes it clear. You cannot require someone to show ID because the government didn't want a whole Australia card, everyone has an ID kind of thing going on. So you cannot require someone to show ID. So my poor daughter, when she turns 16, is going to be the victim of my tech testing. I'm going to make sure that I'm not required to hand over ID as a parent to show how old she is. If they can't prove she's 16, then it's on them to let her on the platform.
And is that because you don't trust
I don't
the
care.
platforms
I would
with your
happily
ID?
hand it over, but I know that there's people who are going to ring me on the radio or email us at the Today Show and say, it's outrageous that they're making me hand over my ID. I shouldn't have to. I can't remember the perfect analogy, but there's a guy called Cam Wilson who works for Crikey, and he said it's going to be like, you know what, you go into a club or a bar now, and the idea is you look young, show me that you're not.
Yes.
It's going to be the opposite. It's going to be, show me that you are old. Imagine everyone walking into a pub or club, or like a nightclub, had to show ID to prove they were old, even though they were in their 40s.
Yeah.
Like people in their 40s
I'd love
and
to
50s.
be asked for ID.
Yeah, exactly. But would you love it if it
Yeah.
was just the default way the internet operated? You have to prove how old you are purely so that we can exclude young people.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Okay, so you have questions about how it's going to work in practicality, and there's definitely going to be teething problems.
Definitely.
What about if there are parents who are watching? Like, you know, parents are legitimately concerned about bullying and all sorts of problems on social media. And there might be some parents who are like, phew, the government's taken the problem out of my hands. I don't have to worry about it anymore. What would you say to that?
I'm really worried about that, Jane. Jane,
Right.
as a parent, and I'll be clear, we've had massive problems with social media in our household. It caused us to need to move our son's school. Okay, so I come at this from a reasonable level of experience. And we didn't handle it perfectly, but we went through it, we worked through it and discovered what we discovered. If I had the complacency to think that the government had sorted all our problems, it would be a real challenge for parents. So my concern is that parents from December go, we're good. Bullying's over. They can have as the Prime Minister says, they can go to the park and play. Breaking news, Prime Minister, they're not going to.
No.
They're going to go and play games. They're going to go on other apps that are not even mentioned. Jane, have you ever heard the word Discord
Oh.
as an app? No.
Not really. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is.
Parents haven't.
Okay.
It is an app that was originally built to allow kids who play games to chat in gaming.
Right.
But it's now essentially just a chat group. There's Discord groups on how to make money on crypto. There's Discord groups on how to play remote control planes. But there'll be Discord groups of just groups of friends at school. Now, the most minimal form of bullying, and sadly you'll experience this like my kids do, is when you don't get invited to the party. Everyone in the class gets invited except you.
Yes.
Now that will happen in chat groups. Everyone gets invited to a WhatsApp group or a Discord group except this child. Bullying by exclusion. That's a simple thing that will happen, but then there'll be other areas where everyone will join this Discord group, unknown people from around Australia, let alone the world, and they will bully a kid. They will target a kid and there will be harm done. And parents thinking that the world is good because there's no online bullying because social media is banned, won't know that Discord is on their kid's phone or computer. They won't know that they've got a Telegram account.
So why is Discord not banned then?
Because messaging is not included. Messaging is literally excluded from this. So that's why Snapchat wanted to be called a messaging app, because they wanted to be excluded from this, because kids really only do use a Snapchat for messaging. Stupid photos of their forehead, but they message. Messaging is as big a problem for parents, because if they're not being bullied in the schoolyard verbally, they're going to get bullied on SMS or WhatsApp or Discord. It will still happen. So parents, please don't think that your kids are safe on their devices or from bullying or from any form of harm just because the government banned social media. It's not the end of the game. It's a tough digital world we live in as parents.
And the other concern I had is, you know, kids under 16 are banned, but then at 16 years old, they've had zero experience of social media, and then all of a sudden everything is open to them. I feel like
the
there's
worst
problems
part
with
of it.
that as well.
Look, again, if the Prime Minister called me a year ago and said, what would we do? I'd say what you need to do is make sure that the 13 to 16-year-olds can have accounts only if the parental controls are turned on. Because my kids, I would argue, the younger ones, now that these things exist, which didn't exist with my older child, their Instagram and TikTok accounts are linked to mine as the parent, and I control how long they spend on there, what kind of content they see, whether or not they can comment, whether they can post videos, the accounts, all that's under my control as a parent. Now, if you're, as a parent, not willing to engage like that, then don't let your kids have social media. But my kids have that limit, and so I think they're going to be slowly ready to be 16 and open on the internet. But every kid now in Australia is going to turn 16 and they're going to get it all. The whole internet is open to them. Now, there's going to be age restrictions on pornography, I think, online by then, which is awesome because that's a bigger challenge than all of this. But broadly, the algorithm will learn very quickly whether they like car crashes or beauty videos. The algorithm will learn very quickly about them at 16. And we are going to need to support those 16-year-olds through a world of content that they've never even thought existed. Either that or they've had 2 or 3 years experiencing it in chat groups because it's been unmoderated.
I'm now remembering what people were telling me when I was complaining about having toddlers, and that is little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. Little kids more physically demanding, older kids, it's so mentally challenging. So what would your advice then as a tech-savvy dad be to parents now? I mean, parents who maybe haven't had parental controls on their kids' social media, or even if they have, and now the social media is being taken away, what do they still need to be monitoring and checking, and how would you approach their 16th birthday then? Yeah,
so the first thing is I would always establish a digital contract with your kids. So it's literally a piece of paper that says, here's how we act as a family on the internet. We don't make hateful comments. A bunch of rules around how you exist online. It's very easy to do. There's examples online. I've got one. If you want to reach out, I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But essentially, it's a signed contract that says, hey, you won't take your phone to your bedroom, and you know, just little things.
I think that's a big one. No phones in the bedroom.
Yeah, and that allows you to kind of establish. We don't use it much, but now and then you can just go, hey, remember this, and that kind of thing. You have to have conversations regularly with your kids. So if you're sitting at the dinner table and they will have their phone, they will swipe whatever, what are you looking at? Show me. And if they're not willing to show you, why? And so then you can be the big bad parent and get grumpy about it. What new apps have they got on their phone, you know? And also those mood changes that exist, why? It's just parenting, and I'm no expert, but I know they happen, and most of the time they're linked to some other thing, whether it was a class result or whatever. But you have to question those moments that you see changes in your kids and find out if they're at all related to, have you seen anything strange online? Did you see something or read something that upset you? Are you in any chat groups that you don't feel comfortable about? Are you seeing things that maybe made you feel funny or that you didn't think you'd ever be able to see on the internet? You have to ask those questions, but be involved. And that sounds really simple, but with Instagram and TikTok, and to be clear, YouTube does not have parental controls, so they've got the biggest risk. YouTube, TikTok and Instagram, if you don't have an account, get one so you know what they are. Scroll through them, learn what they are. And then, if you can, link your kids' accounts. I believe those parental controls still exist until 18, so you can have those parental controls at 16. So when the kids turn 16, yeah, buddy, you can have social media, but I'm going to link your account to mine so that we can, I can get updates. I get little text messages on Instagram that says, Harrison had this much time online today. Okay. Harrison has 5 new friends. Do you want to see who they are? And things like that.
Wow. And
I can control what content they see. So be involved to the point where your accounts are linked, and that gives you some ability to help them manage what they see.
I mean, they're tricky conversations for a parent. Lots of parents
it's awful.
Feel uncomfortable with it. Yeah.
You talk about the toddler things. You don't have those conversations, but unfortunately, those are they're very different conversations. My mum never had those conversations with me. If my mum walked past and the TV was on and I was watching a show that was M instead of PG, she'd be like, "What are you watching?" And she'd just turn it off. It was a bit easier back in the day. So you've got to be willing to look over your kid's shoulder when they're lying on the couch on their phone or computer and go, "What are you looking at?" And when they do this, I'm sorry, mate, you're going to show me. Unlock it,
Yeah.
A simple thing, I can unlock my kids' phones with my fingerprint.
Okay.
Or my phone. Register, I want to know the PIN code.
Yeah.
Your kids under 18, you should never not be able to open their phone or know their password. Buddy, you're under my roof, there's my rules, and this is part of our digital contract that I will know your password. So you can call back on that stuff.
I'm going to be knocking on your door in 10 years' time, Trevor. Finally, do you think this ban is going to achieve its aim, which is helping with the issue of bullying and improving mental health outcomes in kids?
I spoke to a lot of advocates for mental health when this was being mooted, and I heard too many people say the problem exists in other places, it's not going to solve the problem. And I don't think the government listened to enough people on this. So unfortunately, no, I don't think it's going to help. I don't think it's going to solve the problem. I think in 10 years, when we look back at stats and data, which is a horrible thing to do when we're talking about kids' lives and mental health, but when we look back, we'll see at best a blip of change and then a surge back to wherever it was, because other platforms will exist in the same way that these platforms never existed, but schoolyard bullying happened and things happened. Unfortunately, kids will find other ways. Kids are savvy, kids are smart. And that's why we can't assume that this fixes it. As parents, look, I hope we talk in 10 years and I'm wrong. I'd love it. That'd be awesome. But that's the worst thing to think, is that it's going to solve it, because if it doesn't, we need to be ready for what is going on with our kids.
All right, well, if there are parents listening to this, hopefully they've taken that on board and they're going to be really involved in their kids' social media use from now on.
That's all you got to do.
Trevor, thank you so much for joining us for today's take. I've really enjoyed your insights. And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed hearing what Trevor has to say, please do give us a follow, have a listen to some of our previous episodes and give us a rating too, because all of that helps. And I hope you've really taken away some valuable information that you too can use at home. That is all for this week's episode of Today's Take. As always, as I said, give us a rating, give us a follow, have a listen to some previous episodes. We did one with Mia Glover about this exact topic as well. I'm Jane Azzopardi. Until next week, I will see you bright and early with the rest of the Today team. Thanks for listening.